Hi everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is Cameron, I'm 29 years old, and I learned a hard lesson about boundaries, respect, and what happens when you let someone convince you that your gut instincts are wrong. I'd been dating my girlfriend Daisy for about 6 months when everything fell apart. 6 months isn't a lifetime, but we'd gotten close quickly. Spent most weekends together, talked daily, and integrated into each other's lives. I'm a mechanical engineer at an aerospace company in Seattle. Daisy worked in digital marketing for a tech startup downtown. We met through a dating app, had our first date at a coffee shop that turned into a 4-hour conversation. The connection felt natural and easy. Within a few weeks, we were exclusive. Within 2 months, we were spending several nights a week at each other's apartments. Everything seemed good except for one persistent issue: her male best friend. His name was Calvin. They'd worked together for about 3 years at the same startup. According to Daisy, they'd become close friends shortly after he started. She described him as her work best friend, someone she could vent to about office politics and difficult projects. The problem was that Calvin was married, had been married for 4 years. And despite being married, Calvin maintained an unusually close friendship with my girlfriend. They texted constantly, went to happy hours and work events together. When I first started noticing the frequency of their contact, I brought it up casually, asked about Calvin, about their friendship, about whether his wife was comfortable with how close they were. Daisy had brushed it off immediately, said their friendship was purely platonic. That Calvin was like that with everyone, friendly, outgoing, touchy-feely in a harmless way. That his wife Claire knew they were friends and didn't have a problem with it. She made me feel like I was being insecure or jealous for even questioning it. So I tried to let it go. Told myself I was being the stereotypical controlling boyfriend who couldn't handle his girlfriend having male friends. But as the months went on, the discomfort grew. When we'd be out to dinner, she'd sometimes excuse herself to take a call from Calvin. Would step away for 10 or 15 minutes while I sat there waiting. She mentioned him constantly. Calvin said this funny thing today. Calvin thinks I should ask for a raise. Calvin and I are working late tomorrow on that campaign. Calvin. His name became background noise in our relationship. I started wondering if there was history between them. If maybe they dated before he got married, or if there was an attraction that never got acted on. The dynamic felt off in a way I couldn't quite articulate. When I tried to express my discomfort, Daisy would get defensive, would accuse me of being jealous or insecure, would say that if I trusted her, I wouldn't have a problem with her having a close male friend. The implication was always that the problem was me, not the situation itself. So I swallowed my concerns, tried to be the understanding, secure boyfriend who didn't let himself get bothered by something that was purely platonic. Then came that Friday in late October. I'd had a good week at work. Closed out a project ahead of schedule, got positive feedback from my manager. I was in a good mood and wanted to do something nice for Daisy. I knew she'd been stressed about a big campaign at work. Thought I'd surprise her by stopping by her apartment with pastries from her favorite bakery. The fancy French place she loved, but rarely went to because it was expensive. I got off work around 5, drove to the bakery, and picked up an assortment of croissants and pain au chocolate. Then headed to her apartment. She'd given me a key a few weeks earlier, said it was easier than me having to wait for her to come down and let me in when I came over. I let myself in around 6:15, carrying the pastry box, calling out, "Surprise." But stopped dead when I saw the scene in her living room. Calvin was there, sitting on the couch next to Daisy. With how close they sat, I assumed that their thighs were touching. Her laptop was open on the coffee table in front of them, a show or video playing. His arm was stretched along the back of the couch behind her shoulders. Not quite around her, but close. They both looked up when I walked in. Guilty surprise flashed across both their faces before they rearranged their expressions into casual friendliness. "Cameron." "Hey," Daisy said. "I didn't know you were coming over." I told her that I wanted to surprise her. I held up the pastry box, feeling stupid now. "Brought your favorites." "Oh, that's so sweet." She stood up, came over to kiss me on the cheek. Calvin stood too. "Hey man, good to see you." We'd met a few times before. I am always cordial but distant. I'd never liked him, though I couldn't point to anything specific he'd done wrong. "Calvin." I nodded at him, not extending my hand. My tone came out colder than I'd intended. Or maybe exactly as cold as I'd intended. The atmosphere in the room shifted immediately. Awkward tension replaced whatever comfortable intimacy had existed before I arrived. "I was just leaving, actually," Calvin said, checking his watch in an obvious way. "Got dinner plans with my wife." Funny how he only mentioned his wife after I showed up. "Right," I said flatly. Calvin gathered his jacket and bag, said goodbye to Daisy with a hand on her shoulder, and a text me later. Then he left, and Daisy and I were alone in her apartment with the elephant I'd just witnessed taking up all the air in the room. "That was kind of rude," Daisy said immediately, before I could even process what to say. I asked her what was rude. She claimed the way I acted toward Calvin was rude, because I was cold and dismissive. I set the pastry box down on her kitchen counter and asked her, was I supposed to be thrilled to walk in and find you sitting that close with another guy? Daisy claimed they weren't sitting that close to each other. They were watching something on her laptop. She added that I was being ridiculous. I told her that his arm was around her. She argued that it was on the back of the couch, not around her, reminding me that they are just friends. "Do you expect us to sit on opposite sides of the room?" she asked. I took a breath, trying to stay calm. "I expect boundaries. He's married. You're in a relationship with me. Sitting that close, at your apartment, alone together, it looks bad." She responds that it looks bad to me and my insecurity. The argument escalated from there. Her defending Calvin and their friendship, me trying to explain why the situation made me uncomfortable. Neither of us is backing down. Finally, I left. Didn't even stay for the pastries I'd brought. Just walked out feeling angry and confused and increasingly certain that something was wrong with what I saw. I drove home to my apartment while replaying the scene in my head. Around 9 that night, my phone buzzed with a text from Daisy. "You really embarrassed me today." Calvin texted saying he felt disrespected and doesn't feel comfortable around you anymore. I stared at the message, anger rising. Why would he feel disrespected? He was the married man who spent all his time emotionally enmeshed with my girlfriend, and I was the one who disrespected him? I typed back, "I don't really care how comfortable Calvin feels. I care about appropriate boundaries in my relationship." Her response came quickly. "You need to apologize to him." I actually laughed out loud. She couldn't be serious. Apologize for what? She wants me to apologize for being rude and making her friend feel unwelcome. She reminded me that Calvin is her best friend, and I can't just treat him like that. I let her know that I can treat him however I want. He shouldn't be sitting on you like he owns you. Her next message from her was heartbreaking. "This is exactly the problem. Your jealousy and insecurity. You need to work on that. Just be the bigger person and apologize." I sat there reading and rereading her messages. The audacity of demanding I apologize to the guy who was clearly crossing boundaries with my girlfriend. But then an idea started forming, a calm, calculated response to this absurd situation. I texted back, "All right, I'll apologize." There was a pause before she responded, "Really? Yeah, you're right." I texted, "I should be the bigger person. What's his address? I'll go talk to him in person. It's better that way." Another pause. Longer this time. She was probably suspicious of my sudden cooperation. But then she agrees, giving me the address, but asks me to wait until Sunday, to give everyone time to cool down. I agree that Sunday works. I spent Saturday doing research. Checked Calvin's social media. He didn't post much, but his wife was more active. Saw that she posted a lot about their weekend routines. Sunday afternoon seemed to be home time, usually cooking or doing projects around their house. Perfect. Sunday afternoon, around 2 o'clock, I drove to Calvin's house. Both cars were in the driveway. Good. I parked on the street, walked up to the front door, and knocked. A woman answered, his wife. I recognized her from photos. She asked if she could help me. I introduced myself as a friend of Calvin's. Asking if he's home? I wanted to stop by and talk to him in person about something. I saw curiosity flicker across her face. She asked me to come in. She let me into their entryway. Nice house, decorated with care. Photos on the walls of them together. I stood there looking at a photo of Calvin and his wife on what looked like their honeymoon. Both smiling, his arm around her, looking happy and committed. Meanwhile, he was spending his time sitting on my girlfriend's couch with his arm around her. Soon, Calvin came out of the kitchen, stopping dead when he saw me. His expression went from confusion to something like alarm. "Hey, Calvin." I started. "Hope it's okay, I stopped by. I wanted to talk to you in person." Calvin's wife was hovering nearby, curious about this unexpected visitor. Calvin looked like he wanted to suggest we talk outside, but couldn't figure out how to do that without seeming suspicious to his wife. "Yeah, sure. What's up?" he finally asked. I kept my tone calm, respectful, and slightly regretful, like a guy genuinely trying to make amends. I wanted to apologize. The other day, at Daisy's apartment, I think I came off as rude, and that wasn't fair to you. Calvin relaxed slightly, saying, "Oh, yeah, it was a little awkward, but I caught him off guard by saying, I need to apologize for assuming you understood boundaries," I continued, my tone staying even and sincere. "That was my mistake." Calvin's expression shifted, starting to realize this wasn't going where he thought. But I didn't care as I said, "I'm sorry, I expected more maturity from a married man who gets inappropriately close with his female friends." My girlfriend included. His wife's expression changed, confusion giving way to alarm. "What?" Calvin's face flushed. "Cameron, it's not like that. We're just friends." "Right. Friends who sit pressed up against each other on couches. Friends who spend more time together than you apparently spend with your wife." I kept my tone factual while stating my observations. Calvin's wife was looking at him with concern, clear on her face. "What is he talking about?" "Nothing, he's exaggerating," Calvin replied almost immediately. I told Calvin's wife how I walked into Daisy's apartment on Friday and found them on the couch together. Very close together. His arm around her. Watching something on her laptop in her apartment. Alone. I looked at Calvin's wife directly. "Did you know he was there?" The wife was staring at Calvin. Calvin had told his wife he was working late on Friday at the office. I nodded politely at both of them. Anyway, apology delivered. I turned toward the door. I walked out, got in my car, and drove away. I delivered the apology Daisy wanted. Just not the one she'd expected. Within 2 hours, my phone exploded with calls and texts from Daisy. First call, I declined. Second call, declined. Third call, I finally answered. "What did you say to him?" She was yelling. "Calvin's wife is freaking out. She's accusing him of having an affair. What the hell did you do?" "I apologized like you asked me to," I said calmly. Daisy wanted to know what exactly I said. I told her that I told the truth about how I walked in and found them very close together. That their friendship has inappropriate boundaries. Calvin spends a suspicious amount of time with you, considering he's married. Daisy exploded. "You had no right." I let her know that I had every right because she asked me to apologize. I did. Not my fault. The truth makes his wife uncomfortable. Daisy accused me of trying to ruin Calvin's marriage. That made me laugh. I let her know that if Calvin's marriage is in trouble, it's because of how he conducts himself, not because I pointed it out. Daisy called me a vindictive asshole, and I responded by telling her that she's in an emotional affair with a married man while pretending I'm the problem for noticing. If you'd respected our relationship the way I respected yours, we wouldn't be having this conversation. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "We're done. I can't be with someone who would do something like this." I replied, "Good. I can't be with someone who prioritizes her married coworker over her actual boyfriend. Seems like we're on the same page." I hung up. She tried calling back, twice more. I declined both calls, then blocked her number. I felt surprisingly at peace with the decision. That should have been the end of it. But 3 weeks later, she texted from a different number. Calvin's marriage is in serious trouble because of what you did. Calvin's wife is demanding couples therapy and talking about separation. Are you happy now? I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Finally typed, I only spoke the truth. What they do with that truth is up to them. If their marriage is in trouble, it's because of Calvin's behavior, not my honesty. She didn't respond to that. I blocked the new number too. Over the following weeks, I heard through mutual friends, the few we'd had, what had happened. Apparently, after I left their house, Calvin's wife had confronted Calvin immediately. He'd tried to downplay it, but she'd gone through his phone and found the extent of his communication with Daisy. She was devastated, felt betrayed, demanded Calvin cut off contact with Daisy immediately and start marriage counseling. Calvin had complied. He didn't have much choice, but the damage was done. According to what I heard, they were trying to work through it, but Calvin's wife's trust was shattered. Calvin eventually left the company. Whether he was forced out or chose to leave to escape the situation, I never found out. Daisy apparently stayed, but from what I heard, things were uncomfortable for her for a while. I felt no guilt about any of it. Looking back now, several months later, I'm clear about what happened and what I learned. I learned that trusting your gut instincts matters. From the beginning, something felt off about Daisy and Calvin's friendship. I let Daisy convince me I was being insecure when really I was recognizing inappropriate boundaries. I learned that some friendships are emotional affairs in everything but name. They weren't physically cheating, as far as I know, but the emotional intimacy, the time, the priority they gave each other, that crossed lines that should exist in committed relationships. I learned that people will gaslight you about obvious problems if they benefit from you not noticing. Daisy made me feel crazy for being uncomfortable with a situation that any reasonable person would find problematic. I learned that respecting someone's marriage sometimes means being the one to point out when they're not respecting it themselves. Calvin's wife deserved to know how her husband was spending his time and emotional energy. I learned that being the bigger person doesn't mean letting people walk all over your boundaries. Sometimes it means standing up for yourself in ways that make others uncomfortable. I learned that the truth is a powerful weapon when wielded calmly. I didn't yell or make threats or act aggressively. I just stated facts in front of someone who deserved to hear them. Most importantly, I learned that you can't maintain a healthy relationship with someone who prioritizes an inappropriate friendship over respecting your boundaries. Daisy chose Calvin over me repeatedly. She made me feel like the problem for noticing. Demanded I apologize to him for daring to be uncomfortable with their dynamic. The only mistake I made was not ending things sooner. When I finally did end it by delivering that apology, it was the right choice. Not just for me, but honestly for everyone involved. Calvin's wife deserved to know the truth about her husband's behavior. Calvin needed to face consequences for conducting himself inappropriately. Daisy needed to confront the reality of what she'd been doing instead of hiding behind the excuse of just friends. And I needed to walk away from a relationship that was never going to respect my legitimate boundaries. Sometimes people ask if I feel bad about how things went down, whether I regret going to Calvin's house and saying what I said in front of his wife. The answer is no. I could have handled it differently. Could have just broken up with Daisy and walked away without involving Calvin's wife. But why should Calvin's wife remain in the dark about her husband's behavior? Why should she continue trusting someone who was betraying that trust? The truth might have hurt their marriage in the short term, but at least it gave her the information she needed to make informed decisions about her own life. And honestly, if your marriage can't survive your spouse's friend telling the truth about your friendship, maybe the friendship was the problem all along. Calvin and Daisy's dynamic wasn't innocent. It wasn't just friends. It was an emotional entanglement that disrespected both their other relationships. I just made it visible. The fallout wasn't my fault. It was the natural consequence of their choices. I hope Calvin and his wife work things out if that's what they want. I hope they rebuild trust or make whatever decision is right for them. I hope Daisy learned something about appropriate boundaries and respecting the relationships she's in. But mostly, I hope I never find myself in a situation like that again. Because next time, I won't wait 6 months to trust my instincts. Next time, I'll walk away the moment someone tries to make me feel crazy for noticing obvious problems. Next time, I'll know that my peace of mind is worth more than trying to make things work with someone who doesn't respect me. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can do is refuse to participate in someone else's deception, even if it makes you the villain in their story. I'd rather be the villain in someone's false narrative than the fool in my own life. And that's exactly what I chose to be.